This whole time, Slither has done nothing wrong. Slither is a fantastic company. Slither has done everything that it should do. Slither deserves to be treated well and recognized for its accomplishments. Because one thing is absolutely for certain. Samson Pruitt has never hid from any of you. I go to shows in your town. You trash me. You hide behind your keyboard. How about face-to-face, guys?
Okay, it's an isolated incident.
You get to determine what is our pet.
Snakes, a lizard, and a crocodile were removed from a home in Beaver County, Pennsylvania.
My Lord, a snapping turtle. Wow.
Hey guys, welcome back to this edition of the Scaly Scoop here on Tipping Scales. I'm John. This is Prince Zuko. Thought it'd be important to have him out today since we're going to talk about Samson Pruitt. Zuko is a rescue. He was also abused and abandoned. He has come back and done wonderfully, and he is such a sweet snake. I have all of these notes. I want to show you this. I took pages and pages and pages of notes on this whole thing, and I'm scrapping it. I'm gonna try to stick with the facts. Some of the facts I'm not gonna say here. I'm gonna let you do your own research. In the description, I'm gonna leave several links and you can come up with your own conclusions. But for right now, I wanna cover a little bit of what I had previously written. This is kind of ridiculous. I'm like Ahsoka in Star Wars. Some of this I'm gonna cut out, but this is gonna be a journey. So first of all, I want to say thank you to anybody who shared their opinion on the nerd video in the last Scaly Scoop segment, the off the cuff. I think those kinds of discussions are very healthy for the hobby. I think talking amongst ourselves about things we believe in is very healthy for the hobby. That was more of a creator type video. It really didn't have a whole lot to do with the reptile hobby. It was more geared towards creators and a gripe I had from a creator standpoint. Some people didn't quite understand that you can love something and not like one aspect of that something. It's something that we do all the time with Eros in our romantic relationships, where we love the person but maybe we hate that they leave their socks around or something like that. We do it with our filial relationships, our family, our friends. We love the person, but there's the one thing that we don't like, but it doesn't mean we don't love the person. A lot of times it ends there because we can't seem to get past that when it comes to public figures, especially. I can say I love nerd, but I didn't like that, they stole this content or whatever it may be. Even if you don't believe they stole the content, which is fine, which is totally fine. That's small beans. When it comes to small things like that, things that aren't of great consequence, it's totally fine to say, I love this person. I'm still going to associate with this person. I don't like this one thing they did, but I like everything else they do. Things like that, it's totally fine. Things like abuse, things that hold gravity, it's not. Those are deal breakers. They should be deal breakers. I know there are some people who think that we shouldn't really be talking about this publicly. We should be keeping the Samson stuff within the community and not bringing it out to the wider world because it makes us look bad. Well, I'll tell you something. Animal abuse makes us look bad. Talking about it and othering ourselves from it does not make the community look bad. It makes the community look intelligent. It makes it look like, oh, hey, we are not a part of this. We do not approve of this. Sitting quietly and not saying anything about it makes you look complicit to the outside world. I guarantee you this stuff with Samson is going to hit mainstream news. I guarantee you it's going to start to affect legislation. So we need to be on the offensive. We need to be talking about it and how we disapprove of it and setting it apart as a puppy mill type operation in a community that does not support that. Not only does not support it, but vehemently does not support it. This whole notion that we got to protect our own is selfish nonsense, and it gives into the scare tactics that people like Samson want us to give into, to stay quiet about the abuse, keep it between just him and whoever. And this goes for the people who have done business with Samson as well. People that need to come forward, like Lucas of the Retic Lounge, came forward and said, I did business with this guy before. I didn't know what was going on, and now I openly condemn this. Samson should not be doing business, period. People are afraid of blowback by association. I think owning what you've done is the only way to save any face at this point. So that was a big tangent. I'm pretty sure everybody knows who Samson is, but there's some misinformation going around. Some of it perpetrated by Samson himself, some of it from people who know him personally, and some of it from people who have just heard him talk and just simply believe him without doing any research. So let's get into who is Samson Gabriel Pruitt. So Samson Pruitt is the owner of Slither Incorporated, now also known by Slither Exotics, but they are not Slither Reptiles. There's another business called Slither Reptiles, who will probably be rebranding after all of this, that are not associated with Samson or Slither Incorporated or Slither Exotics. Slither Reptiles has a respectable business. Don't go harass them. So Samson started Slither in the 90s. He now runs it with his wife Cassandra, who is equally as guilty in all of these things. While they do have other animals, the primary focus there is reticulated pythons, and it is one of the biggest reticulated python breeding facilities in existence. I don't know how accurate the numbers are, but according to an ex-employee, they have anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 snakes in the facility at any given time. So during the late 90s, early 2000s, Slither Incorporated was well known, fairly well respected, as a reticulated python breeding facility. This, however, was short-lived when in 2001, Samson Pruitt pled guilty to animal cruelty charges, felony dogfighting charges, possession with intent to sell marijuana, and maintaining a dwelling for the sale of the aforementioned. Those last two things I really couldn't care less about. It's not for me, but the animal abuse is the focus here. I'd like to thank Brian Kusko for sharing this document with me that proves that he did plead guilty to these things, even though he likes to say, I was never convicted. A guilty plea is essentially a conviction. You still serve time for it. You are guilty of it. Using the term conviction doesn't change the facts. I'd also like to thank Brian for letting me use some of his interview with Samson, which we're going to get into a little bit later. So back to the facts for now. When the police arrived at Samson's facility, they found 60 pit bulls tied to trees in the woods behind his house and another 21 in metal cages and barrel dog houses, like those big chemical barrel type things. This coming to light caused people in the community to take a closer look at Samson, and it was discovered that in 1997 the same thing happened, except at that time it wasn't a felony to be involved in dogfighting. At that time it was a misdemeanor. So at that time he pled guilty to animal cruelty. So that's twice, 97, 2001. In February of 2003, Samson was sentenced to 27 and a half weekends, very light sentencing, for animal cruelty, felony dogfighting, and the marijuana charges. While Samson abandoned the pit bull dream after he served his time, he did not do the same with the marijuana dream and was arrested again in 2005 for having over 100 marijuana plants, as well as 3 firearms, which as a felon at this point he was not allowed to have. This is just a guy that doesn't learn, you know. Samson drugged this case out for a long time, submitting appeal after appeal, until finally in 2008, after all of these appeals were rejected, he was sentenced to 262 months of imprisonment, as he now qualified for career offender status. And I'm being choked out here. But it looks very fashionable, doesn't it? So anyway, Samson, convicted felon 3 times over, animal abuse twice, dogfighting twice, marijuana twice. Qualified for career offender status under the United States sentencing guidelines. Over the course of the last 10 years, pictures from his facility of neglected snakes have been slowly leaking out. Ex-employees have been slowly speaking out. In 2018, there was a whole petition trying to shut down his facility because of the animal abuse and the neglect within that facility. In the last few months, more of that has come out, and come out on a large scale. Rodney from R&B Reptiles and Lucas from the Retic Lounge did a video exposing all of this. They had an ex-employee on the show. They went over some of the photos, and Samson came back at them with this to say. You can go back and pause this and read it all. It's ridiculous. Essentially, he's just saying it happens and it's taken out of context. He never denied those pictures came from his place. The photos in question have Samson's card with them. They are snakes on the same substrate that he uses. And the fact that he didn't deny they were his, just that those pictures were out of context, is an admittance to me. So one of the links below will be to that conversation, that interview with the ex-employee. I highly encourage you to check that out. There are things in there that you wouldn't believe. I'm going to pause for a second here and show you some of these pictures. I'll tell you right before I do it so you can close your eyes or skip ahead if you want. But I'll briefly describe them to you right now if you don't want to watch. These are animals with giant swollen jaws, some of them missing half their faces, some of them dead and so decomposed you can't even tell it was an animal to begin with. These animals were left in these tubs rotting and stinking and decaying for however long it takes for something to go from this to mush. It's heartbreaking. It's disgusting. So I'm going to show you a few of those pictures right now. Now is the time to skip ahead if you don't want to see them. So those of you wondering about the blur on the tag, that was done by the employee to keep themselves safe. There's information on there that would indicate the time period that they worked there, names, things like that. And in order to keep themselves safe, they blurred that out. But again, Samson did not deny that those were pictures from his facility. He simply said they were out of context. So I want you guys to go watch that interview if you haven't seen it yet. But for the sake of convenience, I'm going to go over some of the main points that I took away from it. So again, the estimated amount of snakes there was between 1,000 and 2,000 at any given time. And there were 6 or 7 employees tops for that amount of animals, which is ridiculous. Samson never had a vet over to his facility. He never took any of his animals to a vet. I don't know if he even consulted a vet, but he didn't want anybody of credibility coming into his facility and seeing the state it was in. So he treated them with a livestock type shot, like as though it was a cure-all, and that's all he ever did. With all the swollen jaws that you'll see in these pictures, it was the job of the employees to cut open these snakes' jaws and clean them out. There's a photo of that I'm not going to show you here because it's just too graphic. But it is in the interview if you decide to go and watch that. So you might wonder why the cards and the photos are color-coded. The pink are females, the blue are males, and the yellow belong to customers. The yellow cards on these dead and decaying snakes are snakes that belong to customers. How do you even run a business like that? Unrelated, there's also no working toilet in the facility for the employees to use. They had to go poop in the woods. Literally. And that's been confirmed by 3 or 4 people now who worked there for Samson. If you treat your employees that bad, it's no wonder you treat your snakes like you did. Like you do. Like you still do. We gotta shut this guy down. That's coming. We'll get to that. There's also a video floating around where it seems like he's sexually harassing one of his employees. I'll see if I can find that. It's not super relevant to the animal abuse, but it is an overall testament to his character, which a lot of people are saying Samson's a wonderful guy, but he's got a silver tongue. And I'm going to go through some clips from this interview with Samson from Brian Kusko with his permission, and I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about.
When they attack me online, I get 100 friend requests.
So these are clips from Brian Kusko's interview with Samson Pruitt over on Triple B TV. I highly encourage you guys to go check out the full interview. There's a lot in it that's not covered here. Also, Brian is doing a follow-up video to this one. It might already be out by the time I post this, so be sure to go look for that as well.
People came to my booth this weekend just to see what all the hype was about. And I pull them in because I'm real, because I'm honest, because I'm professional, because I've got amazing animals, and I understand how to sell those animals to people when they come by.
This is actually very true. Samson is a good salesman. He's a convincing speaker, and it makes sense why some people have believed him for quite some time. The proof of this is even in the comments on this interview, where people feel sorry for him because that's the picture he's painting. This next part is where the serial abuser behavior comes in. Gaslighting, triangulation, crazy making.
Anybody who takes an objective look at the stuff that these people are saying can see instantly that it has to be bullshit, man. It has to be, right? I mean, so when I got here this weekend, I saw Garrett, and I like Garrett a lot.
I just want to pause here and say I know the Garrett thing needs to be discussed. It will be. If you want me to make an entire video on it, I can. I've done a deep dive investigation into this. I've spoken to Rodney at length. I was on the phone with Garrett for over an hour. For right now, know that I 100% believe that Garrett is not complicit. I do have evidence to back that up, but this video is already half an hour long, and I need some time to get everything in order in an understandable way for you guys. But I promise, we will come back to this topic.
When I got here, Garrett was like, hey man, you should probably post something about how you've watered and cleaned your animals a couple of times during the trip. And I just kind of, it didn't even really sink in until I got back to my booth. I was like, hey, I brought $1 million worth of animals. Am I really not gonna water those animals on the way here? And that's my point. It's common sense. If you can remove yourself from the drama and the hype and the anger of the possible dog fighting, this guy's a terrible dog abuser, he mistreats his animals, he sticks them all in little tiny enclosures, doesn't clean them. If you can get past the hype and look at it from an objective standpoint, the stuff that these people are saying is completely ludicrous on most levels.
So what he's saying here is basically if you can get past the pictures, the eyewitness testimony, the public criminal record, and all of the facts. And he's calling it hype to discredit it, but he means if you can get past what's been exposed as facts. And then he goes on, of course, to change the facts and blatantly lie about them.
Sick, unhealthy, unhappy animals don't propagate in captivity, not reptiles anyway. Maybe dogs. Puppy mills can lock them in cages. Dogs are much more prolific. But you breed reptiles. All of these other people breed reptiles. Nobody is successfully breeding reptiles in substandard conditions. It just doesn't work that way. Not on the level of productivity that I've reached.
Okay, so I found all of that very interesting. Of course he would know that you can breed dogs in substandard conditions because he did it. But not only that, he talks about how obvious it is that you can't breed reptiles in substandard conditions. Now, I'm going to show you another picture, so close your eyes if you don't want to see this. But this is a female reticulated python with an extremely swollen face that he has put in with a male. You can see it in the background. That he is trying to breed, and according to an ex-employee, this animal did indeed give him a clutch of eggs.
I'm very good at painting a picture of myself in my mind as being a really good person with good moral standards, okay?
I don't think that could be any more obvious at this point.
With the dog thing, you have to understand my personality, okay? I don't do anything half-ass. If I get involved in something, I follow it as far as a man can possibly take it. Look at where I'm at with the retics. It's just ridiculous. I could have gotten 20 females and a couple of nice males and supplemented my income and enjoyed the animals and had a much easier life. But I'm an empire builder. I have to do it all the way. I have to take it as far as I can possibly take it. That's just my personality.
Okay, so this isn't a personality quirk. This is an example of hoarding, and specifically animal hoarding. Samson's taken it as far as he could possibly take it, and now he's in way over his head.
It's pure passion that took me into it, and I became one of the biggest pit bull breeders that I know of. I had 100 or 150 adult dogs.
Okay, this is where he gets into some half-truths and absolutely blatant lies that we now have proof of, so listen closely.
I have never been convicted of an actual dogfighting crime. When I was arrested, there was suspicion of dogfighting. They charged me with dogfighting, And the governor was reelected. The sheriff was reelected behind some of these arrests. So the helicopters flew over my place. They videotaped them taking all of these dogs. If you come to my snake facility right now, when you walk in and see hundreds and hundreds of reticulated pythons, it's going to blow your mind. It's going to be a shocking thing. So on television, 150 dogs looks like that has to be what this guy is doing. But the dogs weren't beat up. The dogs weren't, there was no pit, there was no fighting, there was none of that. I've never been involved in any type of dog fighting on any level whatsoever. When we went to court, the DA and the judge and my lawyers in private session in the judge's office came up with a plea agreement. I would not agree to sign for dogfighting because I was not dogfighting. And this is the catcher. At the time, dogfighting was a simple misdemeanor, okay?
Earlier in this interview, Samson said that one of the reasons that he got arrested for dogfighting was the hype of it going from misdemeanor to felony. So either he's getting his 1997 arrest confused with his 2001 arrest, or he's just throwing a big word salad out there to confuse people into thinking he's innocent.
I pled out to 2 counts of animal cruelty and to a count of animal abandonment because when they took my dogs, I came back and let my chickens loose because I didn't have any way to take care of them. So they charged me with animal abandonment. I accepted a plea agreement for a worse misdemeanor than dogfighting because I wasn't willing to have dogfighting on my record. I just wasn't willing to do it. All right.
Willing or not, it did show up on this background check for Samson, as well as the court document that I keep showing throughout this video.
I agreed to doing weekends in jail for the misdemeanor conviction.
So here he's clearly talking about the 1997 conviction, the misdemeanor conviction, and he's using all of the facts from the felony conviction to tell this story. He's convoluting the 2 stories into one story, picking and choosing his favorite parts.
This is what it is, man. You know, I fell in love with a hated breed. My problem is, you might have a pit bull for a pet. I can't have just one. I end up getting 20 or 30 or 150 because I fall into the trap of that obsessive behavior. And I understand that. So it is what it is.
All right, man.
And what it is animal abuse and hoarding.
Everybody wants to end this. And if I ended on anything, it was this, okay? You don't have to like me. They don't have to like me, okay? I'm not expecting acceptance from every person out there. But if you're gonna trash Samson Pruitt or Brian Barczyk or anyone, make sure that you do it in a way that doesn't affect the community as a whole.
There is some credence to this, but this is also the kind of tactic that abusers use to keep you from speaking out. They try to instill this fear that you speaking out will reflect poorly on you in some way, and that allows them to continue their abuse. I'll expound on this in a second.
We can grab positive energy and we can promote positivity amongst ourselves while we deal with our disputes in private. If I have a problem with you, if you say something that I don't like, I'm not going to go run you down to someone else. I'm not going to go on social media and blast you publicly. I'm going to send you a private message. I'm going to say, Brian, this is something that happened that bothered me, man. Do you want to try and work it out? Are we going to try and be friends, or should we just decide to be enemies and be done with it and leave each other alone? But airing out all of this public drama and negativity does nothing but destroy the exact same thing that we're all trying to build, man. And that doesn't make sense to me.
Anyone who's ever tried to get out of an abusive situation probably knows this next line.
Because it doesn't do anyone any good. It makes me look bad. It makes you look bad. It makes the industry look bad. We don't have to be that. We can be professionals. We can be really good. We can promote everything and figure it out. At the very least, not fight, argue, and air our dirty laundry publicly. Period. It's just that simple.
I want to say something right now about that part where it's, we should keep this between ourselves. If there's a beef that you have, you come to me with it. There's no need to spread our drama to the world. Nobody needs to see what's going on behind closed doors. That is an abuser mentality. That's what people who domestically abuse tell their victims. They don't want somebody else siding with you and being like, oh yeah, you should leave that person. They want to keep it quiet, and they don't want to answer to anyone but you, who now has no power. There's a very common theme among people who abuse people and animals. Now, let me be clear. I understand that things happen in large breeding facilities. I understand things happen at home where your animal might get sick. It might have some nose rub issues. It might get mites. It might get a respiratory infection. These things happen. It's just part of it, you know? It happens less when you take really good care of your animals, but it does happen. But what do you do when it happens? You treat it. You don't just ignore it. You don't just throw these animals with lesions and infections in with other animals, hoping you can get one last clutch out of it. Things happen. And there is an ethical way to handle those things, and there is a highly unethical way that is animal abuse, and that's what we're looking at right here. So I guess now we can get into what can we do about this? A lot of people are wanting US ARC to jump in and take the lead on this and do something about it. US ARC is not the reptile police of the community. US ARC stands between us and the government. They don't have the resources, they don't have the funds or the manpower to police the entire community, which is why we have to police ourselves and each other. We have to call out this behavior. We have to not keep it just between us if that person's not going to change. Samson's made it very clear he's not going to change. We can't go, well, I like these other things about this guy, so I'm just going to ignore the fact that he's abusing animals and killing animals. We can't do that. That makes you complicit. There are people doing things about this, though. The guys who did the interview with the ex-employee have been digging into this for quite some time. They're the ones really spearheading this whole thing. One of them, the way he goes about it, seems very vendetta-y. But I still applaud him for having the backbone to stand up and be black and white about an issue that is black and white. So again, there are people doing something about this. Samson Pruitt and anybody associated with Samson has been banned from Morph Market permanently. Certain reptile shows and conventions, even NARCB, Animal Con, and several others have already permanently banned Samson. One thing I would like to point out is that he is still selling and he is still vending, and he's doing some of that under his wife's name, Cassandra Velez, who also goes by Slither Queen and Cass Cable. To wrap this up, I know this video didn't really have a direction. I'm kind of all over the place. I had a direction in my notes, I had an outline, I had a ton of stuff written down, but it can't just come from my mouth. So I've given you a brief overview, I've given you a springboard, and I'm going to give you links. Please do your research on this. Come up with your own opinions. And don't be afraid to reach out to some of your favorite creators or breeders and ask them what they think about this. I've talked to so many people that I actually didn't think I would get to talk to at any point. I never thought they would reply. They've all replied. They've all been awesome, with the exception of a few people who are doing everything in their power to save face. But you'll be able to tell that. When you have all the facts and all the resources right in front of you, you'll be able to tell on your own. And you won't need anybody to tell you what to believe because you'll have it figured out. So I guess that's my goal with this video. It's to give you resources, to give you somewhere to start from. I'm incredibly sad about this whole situation. I'm sad that those animals are still in that situation. I'm sad for the ones that died in that situation. And I'm sad I have to make this video at all. If you can, please share this around, hit the like, leave a comment, do what you can to get it in the algorithms. People are talking and people have the resources, because a lot of people are out there saying things that aren't true, that there is actually proof of. So let's get the facts out there. Let's set ourselves apart from this man. Let's condemn the animal abuse openly and publicly as we should. And let's get people like Samson out of the business. It makes us look bad. It does. Animal abuse makes us look bad by association, which is why I get people not wanting to talk about it. But it's also why we need to sever that association. Separate the puppy mill from the responsible breeders and the responsible keepers and the people in the hobby who love and care for animals. Not just in their words, in their actions. This is no different than the FWC thing. People need to be held accountable. We can be kind about it, but we need to be firm about it. Thank you guys so much for watching. And it was a hard one again. But I appreciate you guys. Please be kind to yourselves and each other, especially in handling this. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.